Modern comics are predominantly superhero-centric, and there's nothing wrong with that. I love superhero stories, with women and men in colorful costumes slugging it out, but the medium has been home to other genres. For many years, comics had and have been home to romance stories, horror, spy stories, and sci-fi in all its forms. In this video, I wanted to take a look at the latter, to see what sci-fi comics had caught my eye over the years, and which ones I think would make good television programming. Jim Starlin is one of those guys in comics that has had a massive impact. The man created Thanos. That alone makes him a legend. He killed Captain Marvel in Marvel Comics' first graphic novel. But I think his real masterpiece was created outside of mainstream comics. Originally appearing in Marvel Comics' Epic magazine, and then later in Marvel's Epic line, Dreadstar tells the story of the titular character, Vanth, a man with a magic sword who is guided by a wise mystic. Yes, that sounds really familiar, but at least in the first storyline, the plot is considerably different from what you might expect. Akhenaten of the Osirans fights a losing, galaxy-spanning battle against the nihilistic Zygoteans. Realizing the war is all but lost, Akhenaten prepares a plan that requires 3 special people to operate a particular weapon, and it requires Vanth Dreadstar to help defend them. What Akhenaten hasn't told Vanth, it's a doomsday weapon that is meant to put the Milky Way galaxy out of its collective misery. The Metamorphosis Odyssey is the first chapter in Dreadstar's story. The second takes place thousands of years later, and in another galaxy entirely, where there is a war between a corrupt monarchy and a terrifying religious movement that employs dark magic and worships alien gods. Dreadstar has a new mentor and a new team and a new cause: to stop the war at all costs. Of course, the corporations and the monarchy don't want that because war is big business, and the Church of the Instrumentality, well, their gods have motivations of their own, and their chief operative, the Lord High Papal, hungers for power. Dreadstar is a comic that started strong and just petered out as Jim Starlin seemed to lack focus or interest. Another writer took up after him, but honestly, it just wasn't the same. I think if Dreadstar was adapted, you would want to focus on the first 2 chapters. There's plenty there to carry a series for some years. And by the end, maybe writers could come up with a more satisfying ending. Your pets are being abducted by the United States military and are being weaponized. This is the high-concept story created by writer Grant Morrison and artist Frank Quitely. We 3 is the story of 3 domesticated animals, the dog Bandit, the cat Tinker, and the rabbit Pirate, who have been turned into cybernetic murder machines that will either augment or replace American soldiers in the field, until the program is shut down and the 3 animals are slated for termination. Only the doctor in charge of the project has set them free, and now the chase is on as the military seeks to kill the animals. Problem is, the 3 have been built a little too well for that to be anything but an easy task. We 3 asks important questions regarding the morality of using animals in wartime, a practice that has been in place since the day man rode a horse into battle, or sent pigeons to carry messages. Perhaps when the animals, instead of being our partners, they instead become our proxies in war, that the line is crossed, such as using dolphins to plant mines on ships. Although, to be honest, we do ascribe a value to animal life, based on the animals in question. A dog is considered by most to be more highly valued than a bird. A horse is to a cat. If we went by the cuteness factor alone, bunnies would never go to war. It's a tough moral question, one that is pretty easy for someone like me to ponder. A person who has never served in the military, never risked their life, limb, or physical or mental health for their country, never lost a loved one to the ravages of war. And if you think what happens to the 3 animals in this series is bad, you probably don't want to know how your chicken or beef was prepared. We 3 had an action-packed 3-issue run, and if it were adapted, I would not expect more than a short miniseries. But hell, what a miniseries it would make, full of tremendous amounts of violence and gore as the trio tear through everything the United States Armed Forces throw at them as they try to just get home. Speaking as a cat owner, I think my favorite of the 3 will always be Tinker. Humans stink indeed. The French Foreign Legion in space. That sums up the concept of Alien Legion pretty well. Comprised of criminals, rogues, romantics, career soldiers and officers, the Legion are given the lousy jobs conventional forces wouldn't touch and politicians would rather know nothing about, as well as being the first line of defense against galactic civilization's principal enemy, the Harkallans. Legionnaires are all but expendable as they are thrown into one hellish situation after another for little pay and even less glory. Despite the grim nature of the comic, Alien Legion is not comprised entirely of a group of faceless cannon fodder. You have Major Saragar, the grim leader who balances the lives of his soldiers against duty, along with his faithful subordinate, Tori Montrock, an idealistic young man. Jugger Grimrod, sociopathic criminal who calls the Legion his home, as well as others such as Tamara, Mako, and Tonk. Alien Legion makes for a great war drama, and in the wake of the wild success of the Star Wars movie Rogue One, which gave the Star Wars universe a much grittier look and feel, and sci-fi television series like the Battlestar Galactica reboot and current series The Expanse, it might find an audience. I think if Alien Legion has any drawback is that it might get a bit repetitive. Writers might have to find inspiration in old series like Combat, The Rat Patrol, Band of Brothers, and The Pacific for inspiration as to how to create a wartime television show. That doesn't mean every episode has to be soaked in blood. There were many Alien Legion issues that involved espionage stories or tales involving the sordid past of our heroes. There are some concepts that just never go away, that we see get recycled quite a bit. One is that of Doc Savage, the globe-trotting science hero. We saw him both in Buckaroo Banzai and MacGyver, uber-competent adventurers who use scientific and engineering know-how to solve problems. One very unique spin on the concept is Atomic Robo, a robot created by legendary scientist and inventor Nikola Tesla. The comic follows Robo's adventures through the decades as he faces off against threats both mundane and exotic, from Nazi soldiers employing high-tech war weapons and a mad scientist with a brain in a jar, to an extra-dimensional horror that lives outside of time and attacks Robo simultaneously in different eras. And of course, there is Dr. Dinosaur. Is he a man turned into a dinosaur? A hyper-evolved dinosaur who has traveled through time to present day? No one knows, especially him. Atomic Robo is a fun comic with a great setup, and that stories are not just bound to modern day. Writers can place them in any era in the past century, and each of the trade paperbacks could easily make up half a season or more, as well as there being numerous one-shot stories. For example, Robo meets Nazi Uber Commando Otto Skorzeny in Argentina decades after World War II, or he runs into Dr. Dinosaur at a school science fair. If Atomic Robo has any one flaw, is the character has very little in the way of a face, so emoting might prove problematic. In casting Robo, you would need to find an actor who can act solely with his voice. At the edge of reality is a dam, and in and on this dam are sentient beavers, fighting a never-ending battle against rats who wish to burn it all down. Okay, maybe Time Beavers isn't meant to be translated into a television series. Maybe it's too highbrow, too high concept for the average television viewer to understand. Let's just move on, okay? Ah, Cineshore. Sweet, cynical Cineshore. A pan-dimensional city where your ray gun might work on one side of the street, and on the other it will fail as vampires ambush you from the shadows. In this world where the laws of physics can change from city block to city block strides Grimjack, Private Eye, Bodyguard, Mercenary. A man grown up in the worst slums this metropolis has and has become its most dangerous human being. Grimjack was an outstanding sci-fi series that did a wonderful job crossing genres. Writer John Ostrander and original artist Tim Truman created a world with its own distinct personality and an anti-hero as complex and gritty as they come. Grimjack, John Gaunt, comes from the roughest childhood, sold by his brothers into slavery as a gladiator. And possibly he survives long enough to grow up and become a veteran of the Demon Wars, and then to become his own man at last. Later John dies only to be reincarnated as James Twilly in another age with new adventures and enemies all its own. The nature of the Grimjack comic lent itself very well to a wide range of stories. Gaunt could find himself in a spaghetti western type story one month, and then the next he's in deep space. And then the month after that, he's involved in a political thriller. While the month after that, he's involved in some sort of Mad Max-inspired road trip. It was a very diverse comic about a protagonist that was not always a good man, who was very flawed and didn't always do the right thing. Gaunt was a fascinating character in all his incarnations. Of all the comics, this is the one I would most like to see tackled by Netflix. Well, I hope you enjoyed these two videos. I hope you enjoyed watching them. I certainly enjoyed doing them. It's fun to speculate and wonder what else can be done in the medium, what other comics deserve to be adapted as television programs. If you have some ideas, please let me know in the comments below. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time.